Good morning, everyone. So mostly just be a welcome, some welcoming words. And as Debbie said, I'm Reverend Joan Javier Duval. Had the pleasure of meeting most everyone, many of you. Great to see your faces and be with you this morning. And I am so honored to serve as the president of the board of Vermont Interfaith Action. And welcome to our VIA statewide annual convention, the second virtual convention that we're holding, which is, as with all things I think that are happening virtually, there is celebration in our adaptation and finding ways to use technology to be together, and some sadness at not being able to actually be in person. Regardless, it is wonderful to be here in this time and shared space with you all. And I want to thank everyone for dedicating your morning to being together. I know that there are all sorts of ways that we're pulled in many different directions. And so thank you so much for choosing to be here in this time. And it is so good to be together at these annual conventions. We pull together to remind ourselves of our purpose as Vermont Interfaith Action, to hear the good news of how our joined efforts are making a difference in our state. And so we'll hear about those efforts all across Vermont that all of us have been a part of in some way. And we come together to imagine, new ways of being together that can help to bring about an even more just and equitable community locally in our various parts of the state, statewide, and we begin to plan how we can also bring those ideas to reality. So again, welcome to our annual convention, and looking forward to what will unfold in our time together. And I believe we now have an opening reflection being offered by the Reverend Lisa Sparrow.
Good morning, everyone. I wanted to just give a little introduction to it so you know what is happening. I'm going to offer a greeting in the style of a Abenaki land acknowledgement. And as background, the Social Equity Caucus of the Vermont State Legislature, which was originally founded by our own Debbie Ingram, has begun a process of defining what truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples would look like in Vermont. And I'm on the committee doing that the initial stages of that exploration. Currently, it's being modeled after the Canadian process, which has 96 principles to be carried out. And we've begun the recognition of the active presence of Native peoples currently in Vermont, of their diversity, of their culture, their traditions. And among them, those traditions is the tradition of the land acknowledgement. So up to date, my own part has been to learn from Judy Dow, who I'm sure many of you know. She is a Abenaki person, and she works within an organization called Gadakana, which is an Indigenous organization in Vermont, which teaches all over the state. She is very vocal about saying that learning about Indigenous culture, their traditions, and the languages in Vermont is part of true reconciliation. So writing a greeting such as the one I'm about to read and offer is important, that it's not an historical document, it's not a generic document, it's written for the day for a certain group of people in a certain place. So I'd originally begun one for Randolph, but this one actually will be written from this place where I am, which is Westminster West, which is in the southern part of Vermont. And the only last thing I want to say before I just go ahead is that she prefers the word Sokiki instead of Abenaki, which is her local Abenaki version of the word. So when you hear Sokiki, that rather than Abenaki, that's what that is. So I'm here to offer you this greeting this morning to all of you who I'm so happy to see, friends and strangers. Through the morning mist, we hear the gentle hums of the last crickets of the summer above the rush of nearby streams, the caw of the crow in the field nearby, the low pitch of the bluebird, and the cack of the last of the geese in formation flying south. We know the sun will soon lift today, will lift the clouds, and we will see soft, tiny lavender asters and the last of the goldenrod sidle up along our roads. And the sumac will reign later today, glorious in its final flush of red. Some trees begin to flaunt red and orange crowns, while others have shed their leaves, and others are fully golden in this morning light. The corn is mostly gone now, leaving the squirrels to search out kernels the birds have not already taken. Chard and kale rule our gardens now that we have collected the squash, the carrots, the onions, and potatoes for winter. We are grateful for the days of rain and for the return of warmer days, so that we can enjoy our canoes in the Connecticut River, the Long River, the great Quantico. And we can hike Putney Mountain, Kitsi Pontiku, our small peak of the Green Mountains. The Askwewigek Adenak. Turtles bask in the wetlands of Sandhill Road, the Kitsi Muskudak. We thank the rich valley, the Wolhanok, for all the healing which lives in the earth, the plants, the insects and trees, the birds and fish, and in all the peoples and creatures which still live with and among us. We know the pleasure the Sokiki have in these days of harvest, given to us by the Great Spirit, the Master of Life. And we imagine the intensity of the preparations for winter of the Sokiki people. We are so grateful for the care they have given this land for generations. And we acknowledge the loss of land and life, of language and culture, losses of hope and possibility, losses brought about by illness and violence, by ignorance, invasion, and a eugenics. We mourn the wisdom lost and show respect for the wisdom still present among and with us, in our Sokiki elders and their families. And we claim our hope that we might work together in ways which heal and reconcile, which celebrate and live out traditions we have destroyed, that Ndakana might be honored once again. Thank you. Uli Uni.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And now, as we always do at our gatherings, we're going to have a credential, which tells us or reminds us of who we are and what we're all about. And so I'll turn that over to Reverend Earl Coopercamp.
Thank you. And thank you, Reverend Lisa. That was wonderful. Also, I just got a text from Walter Brownridge. He lost the registration. So can somebody send that to him? Thank you, Melissa. So we are gathered here today as Vermont Interfaith Action. We are dozens of congregations, faith communities, Jewish, Catholic, Muslim, Protestant, Unitarian, others all throughout the Green Mountain State, from Barre to Brattleboro to Bennington, just to start with the B's here in the state. But I think what is important for a credential is to talk about what motivates us. First of all, we have vision. from Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18, where there is no vision, the people perish. Well, we have vision to see the things that are, and then we make sure that we dig in even deeper with our research so that we know what the conditions that we are living in are all about. But we have a vision as well that sees beyond. So we go from the world as it is to what the world as it should be. We also have initiative. We don't just wait for others to do it, but we come together, we join together, and it's in coming together that we then have the power to bring this vision into reality. And finally, I think we have affirmation. Affirmation is maintaining a truth, that truth we have, that in coming together, we can bring our values to make a better life for all in Vermont. That affirmation that is support, encouragement, and recognition as well. So vision, initiative, affirmation, VIA, and that's what motivates us as Vermont Interfaith Action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Earl. We appreciate that. It's great. People are still coming in, but we wanted to have a little time where you are introduced to one another. So our very own organizer in the Upper Valley, Ryan Page, will be doing that.
Hi, everybody. It is awesome to see so many people here from across the entire state of Vermont. VIA has been here for 15 or 16 years, growing across the state, and increasingly this has been an opportunity for us to gather and to see each other's faces and to be able to hear each other's voices a little bit. We're going to introduce each other real quick, but we're going to try and make sure that we save a little bit of time. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to put your name, the community of faith that you are associated with, and your region into the chat if you have it accessible. We're going to introduce each of the regions. We have 4 main regions in which we're organizing. We have the Greater Burlington area, we have Central Vermont, Southern Vermont, and the Upper Valley. As you guys are typing that in, there are a number. If you are from the Greater Burlington region and you have an opportunity, you can come off of mute and make some noise or put some reactions there. You can wave your hands up in the air. But who here is from the Greater Burlington region? Let us see you. Let us hear you. A whole lot of people. This was where the heart of Vermont, the heart of VIA began. If you are from Central Vermont, in the Central Vermont region, put your hands in the air or use some of those reactions. I want to be able to see where you're at. Awesome. Where are everybody from Southern Vermont? Who's got Southern Vermont representation? Fantastic. And the small handful of us from the new and growing area of the Upper Valley, that would be a couple of us here. It is exciting to be able to gather in one space to be able to do that. I look forward to getting to hear from each and every one of you. We're going to hear some reports from these regions and from some of the things we're doing later on. But it's great to see all you guys putting those things in the chat. All of these communities come together to make up VIA, and we're excited to have each and every one of you here this morning. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Ryan. Yes, we are very happy to see everybody. And we also, we're all about relationships and making sure that we connect with one another. So one of our building blocks is one-to-ones. And Mike is gonna introduce this part, and I think Melissa's gonna be the one to do the technology. I'll turn it over to our very own organizer in the Bennington and Brattleboro areas in Southern Vermont, Mike Mrowicki. You are muted.
You forgot to mention my middle name, which is You're Muted. I should put that on my screen and background. So thank you everybody for coming here today. So today's first exercise of the day, and sorry we can't be doing this in person, but I think it means that much more. And I don't know if, like me, many of you may be encountering Zoom fatigue and would much rather be in person, but this is the way we decided do it safely. So what we're going to ask you to do is to seek out a person that you don't know, and I'm not sure how that works, but we're going to take a few minutes to talk one-on-one with each other and ask these questions. How has this last year and a half changed you? What new things have you learned about yourself, your relationships, and about our society? And I think we can put those in the chat. So, and I can do that next, and then I'm going to ask
Melissa
them.
did. Yeah, Melissa did that. It's in the
Okay.
chat now. Yep. Thank
So
you.
she-
And I think Melissa for putting all those together and for coming up with those really cool icons for each one of the LOMs. You can have your own. You can have your own little flag or something if you want using those. We wanted to hear from all of the leaders and to do those reports on our regions and on our issues. And then also the board asked me to talk a little bit as the executive director about my vision for VIA and my experiences of VIA and its place in our state. So I am going to share it's a sort of a state of the organization address with you. So when I first started at Vermont Interfaith Action as executive director in May of 2007, one of the first one-to-ones I had was with Sister Margaret Bro, a sister of mercy who had been instrumental in founding the organization and who was one of our most active leaders. At the point when I was hired, VIA had been around for about 18 months in earnest. Sister Margaret said to me, "We had this big founding event with 900 people marching from their churches and synagogues in downtown Burlington to St. Joseph's Cathedral in the Old North End. Lots of people, lots of press coverage, important guests like the governor and the Speaker of the House and Representative Peter Welch, and then nothing, no action, no impact on the issues. It feels like we've just been spinning our wheels since then. I'll be honest with you, I'm ready to throw in the towel. But I thought I'd wait and see what you can do. I'll give you 6 months. And then if you're still not doing anything, I'm going to quit." I said, "Okay." I thought to myself, well, now that's a charge, a call to action. Sister Margaret passed away several years ago of a rare respiratory disease. But those of you who remember her will recall that she did not pull her punches. And this story is a case in point. Well, I guess we got enough done those first 6 months of my tenure that it worked for Sister Margaret because she stayed an extremely active leader for 7 years until her death in July of 2014. And truly, I am grateful for her straightforwardness in the first few weeks after I took this job, because it forced me to take stock from the very beginning of what it meant to do community organizing and to run an organization like this one. I was new to faith-based community organizing, or FBCO as the lingo would have it. I was quite familiar with nonprofit management, fundraising, and faith, but I had to learn organizing on the job. And as I learned what potential it possessed and what it had accomplished in other settings, I became convinced that the organization's last name, Action, was not only appropriate, but also the natural consequence of following the organizing model properly. And so here we are 14 years later. And today I would like to communicate to you that I see VIA as action-oriented now, with a bright trajectory for even more action into the future. I would like to express my vision of what VIA is and where we are going as a prelude to hearing from all of you shortly about your own present conceptions and future dreams for the organization. I would like to take a look at 3 areas in this little talk: where we are with transforming people, transforming communities, and being faith-based. And just to keep you on your toes, I'm going to take them in reverse order from the way I just listed them. Starting with being faith-based. Vermont has been documented to be one of the least churched states in the Union, along with Maine, our compatriot in other ways as well. This means that people here, for the most part, eschew organized religion. And this presents a challenge for an organization that brings together different religions. However, just because Vermonters don't think much of religion, it doesn't mean that they are not people of faith expressed in other ways, like through the beauty of creation or through living and letting live. There are people of goodwill and people who do consider themselves people of faith who can come together around the shared values of compassion and justice. But sometimes we have to explain to more secular folks that that's what we're trying to do, that we're not judgmental and literalistic, and that we are, as one reporter put it to me once, a benign presence as far as religious organizations go. So to me, it behooves us always to recognize that we do our work in an environment in which we are often misunderstood, where once people get to know us, they probably agree with us, but where we have to get over that first hurdle of suspicion, skepticism, maybe cynicism, before they find out we're not so bad after all. So we have to deal with that on the one hand, but then on the other hand, there are also those people who think we're nice church people, who are sentimental and really only good for providing service and charity to others, not really equipped for policy discussions or pressing them for an answer to our questions. That's another danger that awaits us. And either way, it is highly possible to dismiss us. And then, of course, there are the pitfalls of conflicting attitudes within our congregations. Over the years, I've had one-to-ones with people in member congregations who've told me that they were sad when their church joined VIA because it meant taking money and energy away from direct service delivery through Jump or Meals on Wheels or the food shelf. I've had people tell me that a congregation is about creating community, not about getting into politics. After an action, I've heard some people say that we were too vehement and disrespectful, while I've had others say, we're supposed to be prophetic. We weren't nearly hard enough on that public official. All of this back and forth happened so frequently in my early years that I used to tell the board that if we're making people on both sides of the equation upset, we must be doing something right. For I have always felt that we must walk very particular lines between proclaiming our faith perspective so strongly and openly as to be almost flashy about it on the one hand, while downplaying it so that people won't immediately be biased against us on the other hand. That's one line that we walk. The other is to be blatantly and proudly political, pointing to the examples of the Hebrew prophets and of Jesus on the one hand, while being true to the teachings of our traditions to be humble, meek, and winsome on the other hand. Our role outside the organization and our role inside the organization requires some finesse and nuance so that we can maximize our effectiveness. And so this is why I have grown into thinking of VIA's role to those decision makers we are trying to persuade, as well as to those within our congregations whose support we crave, as that of a moral conscience. VIA is the moral conscience of Vermont. Like a conscience, we consider what our path should be. We reflect on how we're being perceived by others. We evaluate what's going on in the world around us and direct the decision about what action to take in response. Like a conscience, we prick at our core when we're not too sure we're doing the right thing. And we go over and over our own motivations to make sure that even when we're doing the right thing, we're also doing it for the right reasons. VIA is like a moral conscience that won't let the state get away with turning those who have no home back out on the street, or with treating those who have made one mistake in their lives that's big enough to land them in prison, to let that be the defining moment of their whole lives. VIA is like a moral conscience that won't let white people get away with turning a blind eye to how Black and brown people are treated, as long as the white folks live a good life, or with keeping hardworking, contributing community members out of the exclusive club of American citizenship, no matter how respectfully or persistently they ask to be included. VIA is also like a moral conscience that won't let our siblings in the faith get away with never looking upstream at society's ills because they prefer to apply the band-aids and tourniquets downstream, or with being too strident when public servants do their jobs badly instead of appealing to the better angels of their natures to correct their mistakes. So that's the first vision of VIA that I like to hold as I'm doing my job, that of moral conscience, of multifaceted moral conscience of Vermont. The second area I'd like to address with you today is that of transforming communities. This is where the action in Vermont interfaith action is most visible, where the impacts are most evident. I didn't want to read a laundry list of our accomplishments, certainly not since the organization's inception, but not even just since the last 3 years. So I prepared a handout for you with a handy dandy chart of what we achieved right before COVID struck, and then what we have achieved since the world changed and we pivoted, everybody's favorite new word. It's a lot. I'm proud that it's a lot. All 3 of the other staff organizers should be proud that it's a lot, and all of you should be proud that it's a lot. We have impacted our communities with regard to economic dignity, housing and homelessness, corrections reform, immigration, education, food security, and racial injustice. We have followed our model, identified issues at the grassroots, engaged in thorough research, and held effective public actions to make systemic changes. This has transformed our communities. And we have transformed our communities by expanding into them. What you don't see on that chart, because it does focus only on issues, but what I hope you heard in the opening introductions and in the reports, is that we have grown from 7 congregations in Burlington when I started in 2007 to over 70 congregations with varying degrees of involvement, and to having organizers in 5 distinct parts of the state. Some of the congregations are full-fledged, dues-paying, having congregants participating in organizing committees, members, and others have hosted events or asked for training or presentations, or sent their clergy to the caucus, or donated the proceeds from a bake sale or their budgeted mission giving to us. More than 70 congregations, Catholic, Protestant, Unitarian Universalist, Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist, have participated with VIA at some level. And in doing so, they have transformed their communities. And starting just last year, congregations in the Upper Valley of Vermont, on the border with New Hampshire, have transitioned away from a federation that no longer exists to become part of VIA. We hired a new organizer, Ryan Page, to work with them, and he's doing a great job. And so those communities are being transformed by their association with VIA. And this year, people on the Bennington Interfaith Council reached out to VIA and asked for guidance in organizing, as you heard in their report. And the year before that, we had hired an organizer in the Brattleboro area to seek out congregations there. When he left the part-time position with us to take a full-time position elsewhere, we looked for a new organizer and found Mike Merwicki, who is rekindling the connections to Brattleboro area folks and taking over working with the Bennington folks. These Southern Vermont congregations are being transformed by VIA's expansion. And as has been going on for over a decade now, our Deputy Director, Melissa Battah, has been organizing in the Central Vermont communities of Montpelier and Barre, doing a great job helping them to transform their communities, while I have continued to organize in the greater Burlington area my entire tenure. Another thing I was told when I first started at VIA in 2007 was, we want to be truly interfaith and we want to be all over Vermont, just like the name says. It didn't happen as quickly as some wanted, but we can all be proud that our organization has expanded and is expanding, transforming lots of new communities, living up to its name and its promise. This is the second core element of VIA's identity and another mark of our success when we think of the state of the organization. The final area I want to talk with you about is VIA's goal to transform people. We talk about being a learning organization because our organizers do trainings and we coach you and we offer guidance, facilitation, and what we like to call agitation sometimes. We want you to learn new things about our model and principles, about the issues you're working on, about how legislative and institutional processes work. We offer you information and guide you through how it affects what we're doing. But it's not just us organizers that transform people. You transform each other by being in relationship with each other across faith traditions, across geographic areas, across issue interests. You transform and become transformed by interacting in new ways with the people in your congregations. When you tell them passionately about the justice work you're doing, or you reveal an insight to them about the process of change, or you persuade them to come to an action so that we can demonstrate our large numbers and they can raise their awareness about an issue. And you transform yourselves by committing to a practice, faith-based community organizing that encourages you and shows you a way to live your faith in the world. All of our faith traditions teach their adherents to aspire to such a life. I have seen those of you involved in VIA growing and changing in remarkable ways to make this happen. One of our principles is that the first revolution is internal, meaning you must first embrace your own power, claim your own voice, use it in the public square, and take action with others to create the power needed to effect the grand scale change that we desire. If that isn't transformation, I don't know what is. So there are my 3 areas of reflection when I think of the state of VIA today. Our present state is the springboard into our future. Let us take our role as the moral conscience of Vermont, the transformer of communities, and the transformer of people with us as we move forward. There's still so much action left to take. So thank you for listening to that. Appreciate it. And I've been at events before where somebody's spoken and then there's no feedback or no time for response or anything. So we wanted to give you all a chance if you'd like to ask questions or make comments either about what I said or about the reports, anything you want to share with all of us. Yes, Lucy.
Debbie, that was just such a well prepared and thoughtful and accurate report of VIA, and just like, wonderful work. I really feel like we should all be sharing your report with our congregations. And so I want you to think about how you'd like to do that, because I think it's really important. Good work.
Thanks
So
for that. Anybody else? Yes, Mary Beth. And then Lisa.
Debbie, I had that same response that Lucy did, that this is so impressive. I mean, I was around in those days when Margaret Bro was giving her directive, and today I have to say I am so impressed with the number of reports, the amount of action that is being taken throughout the state, how this organization has grown,
and the quality of the individual reports and what you said, Debbie, my first thought was the congregations need to hear how much this organization has expanded and how much we're accomplishing, particularly in light of COVID, where some of us feel a little bit impotent about what we can do, and to see that this amount of action has taken place and is taking place. And I love the way all the reports ended with an opportunity to get involved with the different LOCs across the state, so that if perhaps what you're doing in your congregation isn't your passion, there is an opportunity to link up with others. So, I mean, I agree, Lucy. I mean, that was my overriding sense, is we need to share all of this.
Okay, thank you.